10 years, America redraws its political map. But what if those lines aren't drawn to represent people, but to keep politicians in power? This is the story of gerrymandering, how drawing a line on a map can shape who governs the nation. Today, we'll explore every major gerrymandering case that changed American democracy, and why this fight is far from over. Segment 1. The Origins of Gerrymandering. The word gerrymander dates back to 1812. In Massachusetts, Governor Elbridge Gerry approved a bizarrely shaped district that looked like a salamander, and the term gerrymander was born. The goal? To give one political party, in this case the Democratic Republicans, an edge in elections. Since then, politicians have perfected this dark art. But it wasn't until the 20th century that the courts began to step in. Segment 2. Baker versus Carr, 1962. One person, one vote. Our story truly begins in Tennessee, 1962. Charles Baker, a resident of Shelby County, noticed something strange. His vote counted less than those in rural districts. The state hadn't redrawn its legislative maps in over 60 years, even though cities had exploded in population. Baker sued, arguing that this violated his constitutional rights. The case went to the Supreme Court, and the court ruled 6-2 that federal courts could hear redistricting cases. This landmark ruling, Baker versus Carr, created the principle of one person, one vote. It meant districts had to have roughly equal populations, a massive win for urban voters.
Segment 3. Reynolds Petitions, 1964, Equality in Representation.
Just 2 years later, the court reinforced this idea in Reynolds versus Sims. Chief Justice Earl Warren famously wrote, "Legislators represent people, not trees or acres." The decision forced states to redraw both state legislative and congressional districts to ensure fair population balance. But while population became equal, partisan manipulation still thrived. Fast forward to the 1990s. After the 1990 census, North Carolina drew a bizarrely shaped congressional district, stretching over 160 miles just to include pockets of black voters. Voters sued, saying the state was using race too heavily when drawing maps. In Shaw versus Reno, 1993, the Supreme Court agreed racial gerrymandering violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The court said that while increasing minority representation was important, using race as the main factor was unconstitutional. Segment 5. Veith versus Jubileer, 2004. The court steps back. Then came Veith versus Jubileer in 2004, a case from Pennsylvania. Republicans had drawn district maps that almost guaranteed their dominance. Voters cried foul, saying it was a clear case of partisan gerrymandering. But the Supreme Court, deeply divided, ruled no clear standard existed to decide when partisan gerrymandering was too extreme. Justice Antonin Scalia wrote that it was a political question, not a judicial one. The court, in essence, said, "We can't fix this." That decision would haunt democracy for years to come. Segment 6. Gill versus Whitford, 2018. A hope for change. In Wisconsin, 2011 maps gave Republicans a huge edge despite winning less than half the votes statewide. This became the Gill versus Whitford case. Plaintiffs argued using a new measure called the efficiency gap, showing how votes were wasted to favor one side. The court, however, sidestepped the issue, ruling that plaintiffs lacked standing. They hadn't shown personal harm. The fight against gerrymandering was alive, but stalled. Segment 7. Rucho versus Common Cause, 2019. The final blow. Finally, in Rucho versus Common Cause, 2019, the Supreme Court took up a new challenge. Again from North Carolina, where Republicans drew maps guaranteeing their control. This time, Chief Justice John Roberts delivered the majority opinion. Partisan gerrymandering, while incompatible with democratic principles, was not something federal courts could fix. The decision effectively closed the federal courthouse doors to partisan gerrymandering claims. But Roberts added, "States are free to act." Segment 8. The state-level fight. Since 2019, the battle has shifted to state courts. States like North Carolina, Ohio, and New York have seen their own courts strike down unfair maps. Meanwhile, independent redistricting commissions in places like California, Michigan, and Arizona have offered new hope. Technology now makes manipulation easier than ever, but it also helps expose it. Segment 9. The Future of Gerrymandering. Today, gerrymandering remains one of democracy's greatest challenges. Every decade brings new maps, new lawsuits, and new debates about power and fairness. From Baker versus Carr to Rucho versus Common Cause, the courts have defined and sometimes abandoned the boundaries of representation. But as long as lines can be drawn, the question will remain: who gets to choose their voters, and who truly gets to choose their leaders?